candidates trying to qualify for the next debate. Joins me now, Democratic Congresswoman from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. I just asked Garrett this question, but what a question to pose to you. How are you going to be spending your August to make sure you qualify for the next debate?
We're continuing to reach directly to voters, sharing with them who I am, my experience, the experience that I bring to serving as President and Commander-in-Chief. As you may know, I still serve in the Army National Guard as a soldier. I've served now for over 16 years, deployed twice to the Middle East, and served in Congress now for almost 7 years, really focused on national security through the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and Homeland Security Committee. So I look forward to being able to spend the next few weeks out on the campaign trail. But actually, the last couple of weeks of August, I'll be stepping off of the campaign trail as I go to my 2 weeks of annual Army training, where we'll be out on a training mission for those 2 weeks.
So let's talk about the debates last night, because you had quite a moment with Senator Kamala Harris calling out her record as a prosecutor. I want to take a listen to what you said and then get your thoughts on the other side.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Congresswoman, did you get the answer that you were looking for from Senator Harris?
I got no answers, but more importantly, the American people, voters, got no answers. These are very important issues dealing with a very broken criminal justice system that drastically needs reform because it's still tearing people apart, ruining people's lives, tearing families apart, separating children from their parents. Senator Harris said very clearly on the debate stage last night that she's proud of her record, yet she failed to answer these very pointed questions about these parts of her record where when she was in a position of power and responsibility where she could have been a champion for the people, instead she was the exact opposite. She was perpetuating this, the worst part of our criminal justice system that disproportionately impacts our Black and brown brothers and sisters, poor people in California. And I'm concerned about the kind of leadership that she'll bring to the White House because she's built her whole presidential campaign around being a champion for minorities, being a champion for the people. But once again, when you look at her record, and I'm not talking about a record from 30 years ago or 50 years ago or even 15 years ago. We're talking about her record in the very last job she had just a couple of years ago as Attorney General in California.
You made a claim last night, Congresswoman, that you believe the president is a supporter of al-Qaeda. You didn't have an opportunity to back up that claim with evidence. I'm going to give you that opportunity now.
I appreciate it. There's two major areas here. One is this president has chosen to double down and triple down on an alliance with Saudi Arabia, a country that is the #1 propagator of the radical Wahhabi Salafist ideology that fuels terrorist groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda, a country that both directly and indirectly supports al-Qaeda in countries like Yemen and Syria. And secondly, this president is doubled down on support for al-Qaeda and continuing this regime change war in Syria, even threatening to use our own military to respond to anyone who tries to attack al-Qaeda in the city of Idlib in Syria, where they are in control of and have their stronghold. This is deeply concerning to all of us as Americans, but for me, especially as a soldier who enlisted after the attacks on 9/11 to go after al-Qaeda, that terrorist group that took thousands of lives on September 11th. This is a huge betrayal to all of us, to all of our service members, to all of those first responders on 9/11, to every family that lost a loved one on that day.
Congresswoman, do you not believe that the same could be said for your meeting with Bashar al-Assad?
I don't know how you could equate that. We're talking about a president that is directly...
That you would be meeting with the leader of Syria who could feasibly be responsible for the killings of over 500,000 people, who ordered the chemical attacks on children in his own country?
I will never apologize for doing all that I can to prevent more of my brothers and sisters in uniform from being sent into harm's way to fight another regime change war, the likes of which we have seen in Iraq and Libya and Syria, that have taken so many of our service members' lives, that has taken so many of our taxpayer dollars out of the pockets of people in this country, people who are suffering, people in places like Detroit, like Flint, Michigan, communities across this country, what to speak of the suffering that's been caused. So if that means meeting with a dictator, meeting with an adversary, in order to accomplish that mission of keeping the American people safe, making sure our troops are not continuing to be sent on these wasteful wars, putting their lives at risk, and making sure we've got the resources for the American people, I'll do what is necessary. And frankly, that's the kind of commander-in-chief we need, that truly has the courage, just as we've seen in our country's past, how, President Kennedy met with Khrushchev, how Roosevelt not only met with Stalin, a murderous dictator who killed millions of people. Excuse me, sorry, let me finish. Who met not only with Stalin, who killed millions of people, but actually allied with him. Why? Because it was in the best interest of our country and the American people, and to bring about an end to that war. So no, if it means meeting with dictators, if it means working with people who do things that we find abhorrent.
Or meeting with Bashar al-Assad, but not necessarily meeting with the leader of Saudi Arabia, or supporting, or having a relationship with them.
Sure, you're mixing two different things up. I'm talking about having a meeting.
I don't think I'm mixing two different things up. I'm just trying to get clarity on it, because there seems to be some inconsistencies in your views of it.
There's no inconsistency whatsoever. Having a meeting for the pursuit of our national security and peace is one thing. I would meet with the leader of Saudi Arabia, with leaders of Iran, with leaders of North Korea in that pursuit of national security, keeping the American people safe. The difference between that and what Donald Trump has done and continues to do is he has cozied up, allied with, and supported Saudi Arabia in their support of al-Qaeda and in support of this genocidal war in Yemen that continues to this day, an illegal war that Congress has not authorized, that's killed thousands of innocent Yemeni people, and that's caused millions more to suffer.
So I hear you.
So you're talking about two very different things here. But you know what? These are issues.
Congresswoman. I hear you on this. I hear you on this. So I want to go with this for a moment. So when sitting down with someone like Bashar al-Assad in Syria, do you confront him directly and say, why do you order chemical attacks on your own people? Why do you cause the killings of over 500,000 people in your country?
Look, I want to break this down to what we're talking about. I want to break this down to what we're talking about here today, because you're talking about a meeting that took place, 3 years ago?
Well, Congresswoman,
and every time I come back here on MSNBC, you guys talk to me about these issues. It sounds like these are talking points that Kamala Harris and her campaign are feeding you, because she's refusing to address the questions that were posed to her. Congresswoman, it's important, I think, for
the American people to have context about your foreign policy issues and where you stand. If you're leading with foreign policy and you're running for the President of the United States, a meeting with Bashar al-Assad, which I'm sure you understand, is a very controversial meeting to take. Hence the reason why, when you come on MSNBC, it is important for us to talk to you about that. And of course, every anchor has a different perspective and different questions to ask of you.
Every single time for 3 years. This is where the propaganda comes in, because I've talked about this a lot for the last 3 years. And I've talked about how, as a soldier, I served in a field medical unit in Iraq, where every single day I saw the very high human cost of war. Every single day, the first thing that I did was go through a list, name by name, of every single American casualty and injury that had occurred the day before. So I will not apologize to you or to anyone for doing all that. Let me finish. Okay. For doing all that I can to prevent our country from continuing to make these perpetual wrong decisions that have taken a toll on the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform. I will continue to do all that I can to make sure that we end these wasteful regime change wars that have taken such a toll on all of us and that have made our country less safe. And if that means having a meeting with a dictator, if that means trying to meet with Kim Jong-un in North Korea to de-escalate tensions and remove this nuclear threat from our country and our people, whatever the crisis is, we've got to have a leader with the courage to do the right thing for the American people, putting their interests ahead of everything else. That is what I'm focused on. And that's what's at the center of my foreign policy and the leadership that I'll bring as president.
I certainly am not asking you to apologize for your service. I'm very thankful for your service at that. And I don't think anybody is asking you to apologize for your service. This is more a conversation and asking you questions to explain the decisions that you've made in the past and the statements that you've made in the past with regards to your foreign policy views as you are running for president of the United States. Congresswoman, I thank you for your time. Tulsi Gabbard, very much appreciate it, your time and also your service. Thank you.